I won't be speaking on waste more like as a managerial practice and as a scientific practice, but from a social angle. And the paper is primarily divided into three parts. The first part of the paper will look at the relationship between waste and the pandemics, and not just this particular pandemic, but many other in the past. And then I'll briefly look at the historical understanding of what pandemics have meant to the Indian population in the colonial era. And then I will analyze the contemporary situation based on my fieldwork before the COVID 19 hit the country and after. So the after fieldwork is based on telephonic conversation and less on my physical fieldwork. So given this, now I'll just start my paper, and some parts are a little difficult to comprehend, so I will read out, but I'll try and keep the presentation engaged as much as I can. So there exists a fine relation between pandemic and waste, and we are working towards eliminating both from the world. And I think that's one of the very strong common factor when we look at pandemic and waste. However, in the process of eliminating them, we fail to gauge through their movement of constitution. And their constitution are not based on very different processes, but are rather rooted in the functioning of capitalism, consumer demands, and recent pandemics like avian flu, corona, are more specifically rooted in agro industry, growing fast food industry. Yeah, and scholars like Mike Davis have clearly argued, and it is a common knowledge by now, that pandemics, especially which are originated in animal bodies, can no longer be understood without focusing on the human civilization. And hence, deploying an approach of political ecology and political history is very important to understand the causes and processes of governance, which eventually led to the ecological imbalances and the subsequent economic inequalities in human life. And I'll just briefly explain this through one of the examples of pandemics, which was similar to H5N1 in Guangdong in China in 2003. So many other countries had prevailing conditions, but why is it that the virus spread only in Guangdong? And the reason being that the economy of the area was based on export-led industrialization of poultry and pork production, and the excessive focus on corporate production instead of focusing on the local farmers, which also eventually became the third largest poultry in China. So, and as the area developed, the human density of the city increased, followed by the poultry farms. It became like the area became very germane for the pandemic to spread across the city. So, given this, I will now look at how historically waste, loosely, if I may use the term, loosely mapping onto dirt, sanitary infrastructure, and epidemics were closely related in India, and the impact of epidemics on the lives of waste workers then. When I use the word waste mapping onto dirt, so I'm trying to explain that in colonial era, the term waste was not so prevalent because the waste we understood today has a lot of meaning in terms of value. But when we are looking at it in colonial era, the idea of waste was more about dirt, which was more rooted in the question of hygiene and cleanliness. And in Indian, if we have to talk in Indian context, as Kaviraj and Dipesh Chakrabarti have explained, it's more about the inside and the outside. What is the clean space and what is the dirty space? And when the British government came in, it became more about maintaining the hygienic and immaculate spaces more for their own benefit. So, when bubonic plague, which is known to have spread from infected fleas from small animal, and due to ongoing British mercantilism, it struck Indian cities in 1896 and spread further more due to lack of adequate sanitary infrastructure. In fact, Radnaran Chandavarkar, a historian who worked on Bombay, suggests that plague in Bombay was a consequence of insanitary conditions and was caused by political disorder and social disruption in the city. It was even said that Bombay was not just known as the gateway of India, but was also known as the gateway of diseases. It took rapid spread of bubonic plague and other diseases like cholera to give consideration to sanitary infrastructure of Bombay and then cities like Calcutta. However, the primary reason to even consider sanitary development was to protect British elite and the soldiers who were dying at a very fast rate. And then, just a second. And then the spread of disease was even detrimental for the international trade, as the ships traveling from India were considered to be stigmatized and have been carrying the deadly diseases. In the light of these events, one of the first sanitary commission in India was formed in 1863 under the supervision of Florence Nightingale, and she analyzed the findings of this commission in the following manner. I'll quote: the sanitary state of entire large cities is as bad, if not worse, than the worst of our worst towns before there was any sanitary knowledge. However, initially, and quote close. However, initially the findings of these commissions were used to develop the sanitary and water infrastructure only for the soldiers in and around the barracks. But as the situation worsened with the coming of plague, and the growth of cotton mills and the spread of working class in the city, the British government had no option but to invest in sanitary development purely for the commercial reasons, as otherwise it would have led to great financial losses. However, not only these developments were based on spatial segregation between the colonial and the native population, but also between the native elites and the native working class, which meant the working class population of the city was forced to live in the northeast part of the Bombay, where the mills were located, followed by demolitions of their dwellings, which were then considered to be unsanitary dwellings, and in order to maintain spatial segregation and immaculate spaces. Furthermore, these these unequal sanitary developments were followed by draconian measures, which meant enforcing strict quarantine rules, barging into private spaces, and even demolishing their houses. The fear of such measures led to widespread strikes and simultaneous arrest among sanitation workers, specifically of Mehtars in Calcutta, who were pertinent to city's existence as they cleaned the night soil and swept the cities. The work had spread among sanitation workers in Calcutta that authorities, the word had spread among sanitation workers in Calcutta that authorities were forcefully taking workers to the hospitals and they were supposed to follow the suit. These instructions even had repercussions on the nationalist politics of those times, as British considered that it was okay to enter into the private spaces and that too of women, and it even mapped onto the private spaces of upper caste Indians. And then this did not go very well with the upper caste nationalist leaders, which eventually led to the European murder of a European plague commissioner in 1987. And in fact, that also happened to be the time when Bal Gangadhar Tilak was very actively working against the British government when they were trying to use their draconian measures. And it was during this process of epidemics that Gangadhar Tilak was also given the tag of Lokmanya Tilak. We can see like this, we can see many continuities and parallel of the same practices in the post-colonial context, specifically in today's time of COVID-19. However, what has substantially changed in the nature of what has substantially changed is the nature of waste, which has shaped the present day waste management practices and which has inadvertently been affected by the COVID-19 in many ways. So now I will come on to the second part of my paper, where I will look at the waste management practices, their effects on the waste workers during COVID-19. And I would like to start this section with a quote by one of my very favorite scholars on waste. Her name is Rosalind Friedrichs, and the name of her title of her work is Vital Infrastructure of Waste in Dhaka. So she says that waste management is foundational to producing a modern, orderly city, and its associated discourses and practices are primary vehicles of modernizing missions through ordering spaces and disciplining bodies. Yet, urban waste and its management is a contradictory indicator of progress and modernity. As the outcome of consumption and production, waste represents the excess of modernity. And it is this excess of modernity which I am going to, further discuss and focus more on the paper. So from here on now, here is the point where I'll discuss what do I mean by many meanings of the waste. So in the first part of the paper, I looked waste more as of dirt, and now I'm going to look at waste in terms of more in terms of value and materialities. So just a second. So waste, simply speaking, is anything without value. That is value zero. However, as we deeply examine waste as a matter and as a phenomena, and herein I specifically focus waste more as a phenomena, its meaning can range from being value to non-value to capitalism's access, unruly other, matter out of place, matter out of time, or livelihood for many, those who see value in it. However, that value or non value is contingent upon socio-economic and political constellations of those times. Thus, it is the most mode of governance of waste which further defines its value and its non value, the space, the processes of management, discard, and who deals with waste at what stages. From herein, I'll discuss waste from two standpoints. In one, I'll be drawing on Vinay Gidwani's work on waste on for a Marxist theory of waste, where he argues waste is endemic to capitalism. And in the second part, I look at that how waste as opposite of value derives its particularity in Indian context. So first, to put it simply, uh, value production is central to capitalism. However, to continuously generate value, there is a need to create waste in order to further the processes of capital accumulation. This is often carried forward through a planned process of planned obsolescence, which has been substantiated by Jean Baudrillard, sorry. So Gidwani explains this process by drawing upon Mary Wren's work based on Paul Baran and Paul Sweezy's Monopoly Capital. I am going to quote them here because I think if I'll explain them on my own, I might just lose the complexity of the argument. So I'll start the quote. Because of the insatiability of the accumulation cycle, which derives all capitalist systems, business interest must constantly expand production. The problem of ineffective demand plagues modern business, which, coupled with downwardly rigid prices, forces to cut in productivity enhancing capital, since this would only compound the problem of excess capacity. Um, However, this excess cannot be used to produce more consumer goods given the ever widening inequality of income distribution, nor it can be used for investment, that is to produce productivity enhancing capital. Given these limits and loath to capital lie idle, monopoly capitalism sustains itself by applying surplus capital to the productions or sales of goods and services that do not meet the needs of general populace. In short, this is what Sweezy and Baran describe waste as. If this is not clear, I'm happy to explain it once I am done with the talk. And in the second part, now I discuss waste more in terms of how we can understand waste in particular to the Indian context. And as David Arnold suggests, understanding waste in Indian context is to understand it from environmental, social, religious, as well as economic registers. And given the waste and dirt disturbs our aesthetic sense, or now it is academically popularly known as the unruly other, it can be further understood through physical and social distance and reinforcing the already existing social hierarchies based on caste, class, gender, and bringing in the new hierarchies along with the newer forms of waste. So when we talk about it economically, which is to understand material in terms of their values, reuse, recycle, again the question arises is how do these material enter into the chain of recycling and reuse? Who are the people involved in the processes, and where do these processes take place, where in terms of the space of these wasted materials which are being further reused or recycled? And although it may seem important from the idea of may recycling and reuse may seem important from the perspective of circular economy, but when we are looking at the circular economy, we often fail to question that who are the people, and like who are the laboring bodies, and what are the spaces of these recycling and reuse economies. Um and yeah, and the second part of is that pertinence of waste studies in Indian context lies in its long drawn association with caste, followed by consumerist economy. So although across the world in many countries working and living conditions of waste workers are highly precarious, but as we all know, what is peculiar to Indian context, or rather South Asian context, is its waste association with caste based hierarchies, untouchability, and the notions of purity and pollution, where not just the materials but the bodies of waste workers are subjected to such heinous practices. Here, I would like to very shortly explain what's happening with the idea of caste structure and waste. I mean, that's also the larger argument of my PhD thesis, and I'm happy to explain it after the talk. So the thing is that when we understand waste in terms of dirt, so we have had a particular section of community who have been removing dirt from across the country. That is primarily Valmiki community in India, who are scheduled caste communities and have been erstwhile untouchables, although the practice still prevails. But when we look at wasted materials in Indian context now, so the people who are dealing with wasted materials are not necessarily from scheduled caste communities, and actually it's a rarity to come across Valmiki community people who are engaged in waste economies in terms of recycling and reuse. The people who are actually engaged are specifically to Delhi. There are lots of Bengali Muslims and lots of other OBC Hindus who are practicing, who are engaged in these economies. So it also leads to a kind of argument that so at once we can see that there is this rigid caste hierarchy which exists, but also simultaneously what is happening is that we see that how similar caste practices are mapping onto other communities. So there is this caste and class intersection taking place, where because of the growing unemployment a large body of people are entering into waste economies and are subjected to same practices of untouchability and social hierarchies which were earlier only restricted to Valmiki communities in terms of waste and dirt. So that is one way to look at, how we can understand waste in terms of its different meanings. And like as the paper progresses, I'll explain that how both the communities are differently affected by COVID-19. So given this, I discussed the contemporary waste crisis in the light of pandemic, which has further exposed the schisms of Delhi's waste management processes and has affected the lives of waste workers. um, on October 2019, Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched Swachh Bharat Abhiyan in Delhi's historic colony, or as the residents of that colony like to call it, Valmiki Basti. So the main aim of the mission, as we all know, has been to eliminate open defecation and improve solid waste management practices, and cleanliness being at the heart of it. So the pertinence of the colony lies in the fact that Gandhi stayed in that colony along with the Safai Karamcharis for around briefly 200 days in 1946. And his experiments of staying in the Basti along with among the Valmikis was portrayed for their concerns and the concerns for cleanliness. However, his concern for cleanliness and cleaners was rather incongruent and came to be garbed in the language of spirituality. So Gandhi, when he visited the Basti, he referred to the sweepers as bhangis, As for him, it did not matter whatever you called them. This stands in stark contradiction with the fact that he was someone who coined the term Harijan, that is, children of God. And then when he's himself visiting the Basti, he thinks that the term coining a term does not matter, and he thought that it is absolutely fine to call Valmiki people as Bhangis. So, what, according to him, what mattered to him was their condition and the pertinence of the occupation itself, which he referred to as the highest occupation as it protected the health of everyone at large. So, this was, and surprisingly, this was cleanliness was one of the things which Gandhi had, like he had a soft corner for cleanliness, and he actually agreed with British ways of cleaning a public space, which, unlike otherwise, he was not so much vested into the idea of cities, the idea of urbanization, an idea of industrialization. But this was one of the topics where he did not disagree with the government, and rather he had a very strong ideas about cleanliness, where I will quote him, as he said that everybody is selfish, but we seem to be more selfish than others. We do not hesitate to throw refuse out of our courtyard on the street. Standing on the balcony, we throw out our refuse or spit without pausing to consider whether we are inconveniencing the passerby in cities. And we keep the tap open thinking that it is not our water that flows away. We allow it to run. We are so much where so much selfishness exists, how can we expect self sacrifice? So this, I think, to my mind, this statement reflects a lot of morality that Gandhi was trying to impose in terms of cleanliness. However, this morality did not came in when it was about throwing away the yoke of caste structures, because he felt that it is okay to retain the caste structure. What we do not need to retain is the caste hierarchies in those structures. And then it is these ideas which have been which have further gained legitimacy and have even like influenced Swachh Bharat Abhiyan to a great extent. And his intermittent stay in the colony has inspired many political leaders to pay symbolic visit to the colony, as many of the Valmiki Basti dwellers who stay there, they told me that most of the prominent leaders, when they come to the city, they often come and pay their visit to the colony because they understand that colony is very important, and the dwellers, Valmiki Basti dwellers, they would like to feel that this is the point from where the city starts. Delhi means Valmiki Basti, and that's what Gandhi's presence in the Basti did. And then the similar trajectory was followed by PM Modi. But when he say, and like we see all over Swachh Bharat Gandhi's posters, so clearly, at least there is a projection that he's being influenced by Gandhi. So and he started Swachh Bharat Abhiyan from there on 2nd October. However, as alleged by some of my interlocutors in the colony, that although the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan commenced from the Basti, however, their houses were covered with white drapes and houses were locked, followed by the presence of military personnel in their balcony. In fact, many and these ideas were further legitimized by Gandhi Modi's previous view when he was chief minister of Gujarat, and he said that cleanliness is not a bad work; it's a spiritual kind of work. And these references were further substantiated in his op-ed article in Indian Express, which read as "The Green State of Mind" on 4th October 2018, wherein he remarked that the world needs to shift to a paradigm of environmental philosophy that is anchored towards environmental consciousness rather than merely government regulated. And these assertions were supported by invoking phrases from Prithvi Shukta of Atharveda. So, in a way, Modi has time and again invoked Hindu philosophy and Vedantic philosophy in order to give legitimacy to the idea of cleanliness. But the these same similar Vedantic traditions have not been invoked when it is about the conditions of waste workers. So when he's invoking phrases from Prithvi Shukta and Atharveda, I'll just paraphrase it in English as it was written in his article. It says that cleanliness means salutation to Mother Earth. In her is woven together ocean and river waters. In her is contained food, which she manifests when plowed. In her indeed is alive all lives. May she bestows us that with life. So contrary to this, now I will it's very obvious that Mr. Modi did not invoke uh, hymns from Rig Veda but only from Atharveda. But here I will invoke certain hymns from Rig Veda which Ambedkar discusses in Hoover Shudras, where he discusses that how in Purushukta, Ambedkar discusses these hymns in order to explain how the caste system came and these Vedas gave legitimacy to that caste system. So I will read out two verses, that is verse 11 and 12 from the Purusha Shukta, which says, when in brackets the god divided Purusha into how many parts did they cut him up? What was his mouth? What was his arm? Had he? What two objects are said to have been his thighs and feet? So the Brahma was his mouth, the Rajanya was made his arms, the being called the Vaishya, he was his thighs, and the Shudra sprang from feet. So now, in analyzing the significance of Purusha Shukta in Hindu life, Ambedkar asserts that while the words of injunctions as given above may sound powerless and may often look benevolent in thinking of well organized society, nonetheless, it has a monstrous effect at the real level of society. It is only the real site of social organism or Varna ordained social ecology, the ideal or the apparent benevolent language of Veda and its declaration about legitimate social class divisions fall short in providing us with an equal society. The century old history of Brahmanical Hindu tradition of India bears witness to this real oppression which Ambedkar invokes in order to critically look at Brahmanical Hindu religion and its smritis and shastras. Whereas Mr. Modi's invocation of benevolent and pure nature as found in the Vedic scripture is just the opposite of Ambedkarite hermeneutics. In Modi, the social real is negated while searching for a green or as pure state of mind. So, by creating this smoke screen of spirituality and pertinence of cleanliness, the conditions of sanitation workers have been worsened both by the present government and the preceding governments. Moreover, by eulogizing Gandhi's spiritual aspect of sanitation work, uh, PM Modi and erstwhile Gandhis have they have even removed the pretense of dissolving caste system in country, and any kind of broader imaginary of Hinduism without caste, if it can ever exist. So now I will finally come to the question of pandemic and how it has further highlighted, worsened, and reinforced these existing work condition and the caste hierarchies associated with sanitation workers. So on 24th March, when Mr. Modi declared the nationwide lockdown, while everyone was told to follow social distancing, sanitation workers, doctors, nurses became the essential workers, and they were required to work without fail, and they were even tagged as Corona warriors. And in some areas, they were even facilitated with garlands and the pomp and show of thali and tali. Given the nature of pandemic, cleanliness and hygiene are so pertinent to its eradication that any kind of dirt, disorder, or waste could prove to be disastrous. However, as it has historically been, the dirt had to be borne by Safai Karamcharis of Valmiki community who have always been socially and physically ostracized and discriminated. So the detritus of the dirt and waste is borne by the Dalit bodies in order to maintain immaculate public spaces in other areas. So the first day of after the lockdown, it was a chaos for many sanitation workers and rag pickers in the city. By city here, I mean Delhi. My fieldwork is primarily based in Delhi. So as many of them travel, they have to travel for 20 to 30 kilometers on daily basis in order to reach their workplace. Due to lack of transportation facilities, many sat in the initial days. Many sat at home clueless, while it was announced that those who have to travel afar or have to cross border, mostly from UP and Haryana, can stay at home. However, as it turned out a month later, their salaries were deducted not for reporting for those days. Similarly, early in the lockdown, many national dailies in Delhi reported that sanitation workers, they have specifically the ones from North Delhi Municipal Corporation, they have not received their salaries, and this is a very common practice in North Delhi MCD and East Delhi MCD. But not having salary in such challenging times even proved to be worse for many of them. And these narratives were further these narratives are further followed by the lapses on the part of MCD, pushing them towards vulnerability and precarity. It's a common sight in Delhi to come across sanitation workers not wearing masks. They often cover their face with their handkerchiefs or dupattas. And once I was standing in ASI office in MCD, in North MCD. ASI is this assistant superintendent for the Safai Karamcharis. And look, just because I was standing over there and a sanitation worker came and he was not wearing his mask, so ASI shouted at him that why are you not wearing mask? And then without any hiccups, the sanitation worker shouted back at the ASI that if you think you're going to provide us one mask for 6 months and without any soaps, what do you expect us to think? Do you think that we are going to wear the same mask on daily basis? So these are the kind of incidences which sanitation workers have come across very rampantly. So although sanitation workers were given masks initially, but they were unsure if the mask can be used repeatedly, given that they're exposed to dust and waste on daily basis. Few others have complained that they have been provided with masks but not gloves and sanitizers. Many workers express the need for sanitizers given the nature of their work. Instead, they have been provided with fluorescent jackets so that they can be identified as essential workers and not harassed by the police. So these indifferent and careless treatment meted out by sanitation workers are accentuated by further visceral practices of untouchability carried out at a very quotidian level, adding to the feeling of humiliation and depriving a Dalit body of its own labor, sometimes in death and sometimes in light. So here I'm going to quote V. Geetha from on Bereft of Being, where she says, according to the stunningly circular logic of the caste order, the untouchable slaver, her vocation by simply being her body and being is doomed to irrelevance. So I'll explain this by one of the incident I came across. One of the Safai Karamcharis who's been working at Ram Manohar Lohia Hospital of Delhi, which became initially it was Ram Manohar Lohia and LNJP, which were the main hospitals to treat corona patients in the city. So this worker has been working with the hospital for 15 years and has been on contract for 15 years with Sulabh International. So even most of the government hospitals in the city have contract with private companies, and this person gets only 13,000 as his salary. So as the COVID struck the city, initially what happened was that when when doctors and nurses were asked not to work on continuous basis, but sanitation workers were asked to work on continuous basis every day in the hospital. The reason being, doctors and nurses were asked to work one day and then after another day on alternate basis, so that they do not get exposed to COVID. And even if a doctor or a nurse was asked to work for 15 days straight, they were asked to quarantine in the Lalit, which is the one of the five-star hotels in the city. So they were asked to quarantine in that hotel for another 15 days. However, the sanitation workers, for them such rules did not apply. They had to work without any failure and on daily basis, and obviously they did not get any quarantining facilities in the Lalit hotel. They had to go back to their households. And as many workers complained that even if they contracted COVID and if they had to go on leave, the hospital did not provide them with any kind of help. And if they were on leave, their salaries were deducted. So this was the treatment which was meted out by most of the sanitation workers, even in LNJP and Ram Manohar Lohia Hospital. And to their dismay, what the workers had to say, that although nurses and doctors, they work very closely with the COVID patients, but as sanitation workers, we work even on the bodies of not just patients, but with the nurses and the doctors. We carry their PPE kits, we carry the injection, we carry the blood and the urine of the patient. So why is it that we do not get those kind of facilities as doctor and nurses get? And the second aspect comes in when it was about the death of sanitation workers in the city. So I talked to chairman of Safai Karamchari Ayog, who's Sanjay Gehlot in Delhi, and he told me that till date there are. I just talked to him a couple of days back, and he told me that till today there are 22 cases pending. 22 cases pending for the workers who are dead to receive any kind of compensation. Very few workers, barely one or two workers families have received that compensation. That is because the MCD, so sanitary work in Delhi comes under MCD, and the MCD, which is so MCD is governed by BJP. It's the BJP in power. They have not they have not given the sanctions to those deaths. Even when the workers were on duty, it's written in their medical reports that they died by heart attack or some other diseases. They were not given the certificates of the death because of corona. And if they were given those certificates, then the workers would have received at least 1 crore rupees of compensation, which they obviously did not receive for till date. So these are some of the incidences which reveal that how, even when the sanitation workers who've been termed as corona warriors, but there is no respect and justice even in this aspect of their lives. um yeah, just and just to make the case worse, the central government has started the process of contractualization of waste workers with full force. Until now, government-based Safai Karamcharis in Delhi and mostly across the country were based in three categories, that is the permanent, daily wagers, and the substitute. So the permanent workers are who are permanent government sarkari workers, and they receive their salaries and pensions. And now, for many years, the tradition has been that most of the workers are daily wages who are on contract based, and they get 13,000 rupees a month. And then there are substitutes who work when the permanent workers are on leave. So these are the three categories which were already making the condition of sanitation workers in the city very precarious. And now, as the situation stands in the middle of the pandemic, all the three MCDs have started the process of informalization and contractualization of sanitation workers, wherein no worker will anymore have permanent job, and everyone will be based on contract. Everything will be based on contract by private companies. These processes has already been in pipeline for many years, where MCD has been pushing private companies to take over the sanitation work. However, a full blow to it was given by amid this pandemic, which forced many Safai Karamcharis, their union leaders, and the chairman of Safai Karamchari Ayog to take up to the streets and protest in the middle of the pandemic. The day many individuals and collectives from Valmiki community were protesting in front of Valmiki Basti on Mandir Marg Road, because of the outrage against UP government in the alleged Hathar escape. On the same day, it was on Gandhi Jayanti that many Karamcharis took to the street because of the process of informalization. So we see that these two, how the community has been bearing injustice for over the years, where we see that on the day of Gandhi Jayanti, which is known for its as the day of Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, we see a massive protest for because of the Hathras rape case incident and because of the informalization of waste workers. So, and now if you have to look at the way these companies are privatizing the whole thing, so these companies will not only benefit from the subsidies provided by the government, but also by having access to the waste materials, which is being already used by companies to produce electricity and further sell it to other private companies. So Ramki, a Hyderabad-based waste management company, is a case in point. The company has been operating in North Delhi for 10 years and has recently opened an engineered landfill in Bhavana, that is northwest of Delhi, where they mechanically segregate and incinerate the wasted materials and sell the generated electricity to the Tata Power. So the presence of these company has not just informalized and contractualized the positions of Karamchari, but they have also reduced the access of informal waste pickers in and around the city. Moreover, they have even exploited the pandemic to their benefit by deceptively asking people to give their waste to these public-private partnership-based companies. So, for example, uh, in northwest of Delhi, where I come from, what happens is that there are two kinds of garbage collectors. One is based on the one is the set of informal rag pickers who visit the colony on daily basis, and then there are then there are garbage collectors designated by the government, which is right now Ramki. It's a private company run in a public-private partnership by the government. So for many years, as I have seen, many people would not give their waste to this company because they would not accept the unsegregated waste, and it was easier for informal workers. It was easier for household to give their waste to informal workers because they can go inside the household, climb stairs, and just take the unsegregated waste. However, these companies have now exploited the situation, and they have earlier they would not accept unsegregated waste, but now, so that people start giving them waste, they have started taking the unsegregated waste, so that the now which is inadvertently reducing the access for the informal waste pickers in the city. So, which brings me to my next point, that is on the condition of informal rag pickers during the pandemic. Earlier, and like not only are the rag pickers pushed into complete precarity, but they're also in this process exposed to dangerous work conditions. So, first, in the initial 2 months of the lockdown, when there was a complete breakdown of supply chain system, and when I talk about supply chain system here, I specifically talk about the recycling industry. So from rag pickers to kabadi walas to recycling units in Narela, Bhavana in Delhi. So then also like the supply chain system was completely broken, but then also rag pickers took the risk of collecting garbage, that too of the unsegregated waste, when people dumped their mask, gloves, face shield without thinking of their impact on the lives and the health of rag pickers. So, in middle class colonies of Delhi, people often prefer to give their waste to these people. And what happens in the process is that even while these rag pickers were visiting these colonies, so there was no, although people were maintaining social and physical distance for themselves, there was no social distancing. There was no kind of social distancing for these rag pickers, and whether it was from the humans or whether it is from the wasted materials. And this I'll explain it through one of the examples of my informants who told me, who works at the Bhalaswa landfill. And so he happens to be one of the waste dealers, and he's no more a rag picker. He collects waste from different rag pickers, but now given the situation of pandemic, he's now forced to climb up the landfill due to lack of earning. And he told me that anyways on daily basis we deal with all kinds of waste. Certainly there has been increase in medical waste, but prior to COVID-19 also we saw half dead animals, syringe blood all around the landfill. We are not surprised and bothered by the current situation. The moment we jump into waste work, we leave our destiny to God, and that is all we have. So as he explained that, he also told me that picking up PPE kits is very common for us. So we pick up PPE kits, we wash them, and then we further sell it to recyclers. So we can imagine, like even a plastic, like definitely there has been an increase in plastic, but when we're talking about recycling, there has been excessive recycling even of the PPE kits. So many workers like Moedul, who have been literally reduced to wasted lives, unable to sell their collected objects, forced to beg on streets, while also carrying out the work of waste, continue to sustain themselves amidst this chaos and maintaining the order of our cities. So when I use the term wasted life, I use it very wasted life by Zygmunt Bauman. I use the term consciously and very cautiously. Many waste scholars have used the term, they have resisted the use of the term, as it can possibly, reduce or straitjacket the lives of workers and sanitation workers to the notions of useless dirt disposal. However, I believe here the term has been deployed by Bauman more as an analytical category than as a descriptive category. He argues how modernity and globalization has pushed large part of population towards the extreme margins of the society, rendering them jobless and as wasted lives. Here, the lives are not wasted in their innate self, where life does not hold any meaning, but they are reduced to waste in terms of excess population about whom nobody cares. So, given this, I would just like to conclude and say that I argue in times of pandemic, which could have been a moment to understand the processes of waste constitution and its disastrous consequences, and to understand how it can in future be co-constitutive of many future pandemics, has been further exploited to reinforce and exacerbate the already existing social hierarchies and inequalities followed by proliferation of wasted materials. So, unlike earlier pandemics like plague and influenza, which although have proven to be extremely problematic, but have also evidenced to be junctures of sanitary developments in cities like Bombay and Calcutta. Thus, even as we see Twitter trends like hashtag India fights Corona, the bodies and sites which are engaged in maintaining waste management services are the ones also bearing the burden of being vulnerable to coronavirus, and are simultaneously injecting the burden of subsequent wasted materials produced in the process. So yeah, that is what I had to say in my presentation. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, Aparna. It's a really interesting paper, and I think it will invoke new thoughts into our how we see the waste materials and the people who collect waste and all. So the floor is open to the question and answer. So you can ask, anybody can ask question. Just unmute yourself and ask question. I have few questions. I will ask in the end.
Okay.
Yeah. Anybody, if you have any question, please feel free to ask.
Hello, madam.
Hi.
I, I am from West Bengal in Malda.
Okay.
So my question is, madam, why are you choose in this webinar for the pandemic? Is hello.
Can you just repeat your question?
Yeah. So, madam, my question is, why are you selected in this paper for your webinar?
Why she has selected this paper for this webinar?
Yeah.
Actually,
Why are you selected in this topic for of your webinar?
I think I can answer it, or you just go
Uh,
ahead. You can answer.
uh, So one thing is that I was asked to speak on the topic, and another thing is that I think, like, as I have spoken throughout my paper, we need to we cannot understand a pandemic or an epidemic just as they are, maybe not just in terms of their biological composition or how they mutate in human lives. It's very important to understand that how pandemics are co-constituted by human civilization, and how our lives are like, intricately connected with each other in terms of our life processes, whether it's with the objects, whether it is with the air, whether it's our social and political economic structure. So when we are talking about a pandemic and when we are talking about waste, I think there is an intricate connection between the two which we need to understand, because it is through our actions that we are like, waste is also simultaneously affecting the ecology, and so is pandemic. So there is an underlining connection between the two, which I think is very important to understand, and that's how I choose to speak on the topic.
Okay, thank you, madam. Thank you.
Any other question? I think people are taking time.
Madam,
Yeah, hi.
myself is Harish Shetty.
Yeah, hi. Hi,
Hi.
Harish.
Madam, can you highlight any advantage of this coronavirus, that is pandemic, which it has on the human life? Any advantage you find?
See, tangentially, I don't think, I mean, I cannot speak because I do not research on pandemics as such. So I am not sure if I am in the position of speaking about that. And empirically speaking, I don't think it has affected the human lives in a positive way. But what it has done is to, I think, every epidemic brings with itself a chaos, and it is up to us and the people in power to understand that how do we understand that chaos and how we are going to take it forward. So if there have been the there have been inequalities in the society, and this pandemic has further reinforced those inequalities and shown us those inequalities in the most bare manner. So if anything good, I mean, that is actually not something very good. But if the people in power want to understand that what kind of inequalities exist, then I think this is a good moment to understand that what can be done better in the future. That's the only good thing it has done, nothing else, to my understanding. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, if we quote the this Arundhati Roy's term, this pandemic is a portal. So
Yeah.
that's how it's a advantage that it's given us a mirror to see our society in those lines. Okay. So any other question?
Hi Aparna, Nidhi here.
Anidhi.
Excellent presentation. I really enjoyed listening to you. But I am just curious because I work on gender and I was thinking if you have come across in your fieldwork maybe as how gender sort of enters, because we see that it's not like only the sanitation in itself is something which is I mean, women are very intrinsic to the entire, sanitation labor also. So I'm just curious here, and I know that that is not your area of focus, but I would like to listen to you if something has come up in the fieldwork regarding that. Thanks.
Uh, so I mean, I'm not sure if I can speak in particular to pandemic, but I can speak in particular to waste economies in Delhi, because, and especially among rag pickers, because what I have seen is that of course there is increasing precarity in their working and living condition, but when it comes to women, it's obviously even much worse. One is the fact that obviously they get less paid. That is because of the fact that lot of kabaddi dealers tell that the women cannot, like in a very cliche manner, they say that women cannot do the same work as men can. So women cannot carry that much because they have to carry heavy sacks. So women cannot carry those heavy sacks. Women cannot lift up the heavy wasted materials. So according to them, that is the reason they often get less paid in waste economies. And second is also the fact that we have to, when these rag pickers they visit colonies and even the landfill, being women, their lives are always at threat. It is, I mean, we all know that a woman's body is much more for this the world we live in. They're much more for a patriarchal society. It's easily accessible. So as rag pickers, when they go around these colonies and to the landfill, they are subjected to a lot of forms of sexual violence, and especially around landfills at night. So many times women feel that if they, a lot of fresh waste comes to landfill at night, and lot of times women they want to go to landfills at night and even in evening, but the reality is they are unable to frequent landfill at those hours. It is because of the way societal situation exists right now. And I'm not sure if I can speak right now particular to pandemic, but one of the examples that I have seen is that there is this woman. She used to do rag picking on daily basis in my area, but since the time pandemic has hit, she uh, she has not been able to collect waste, and she does not have those kind of networks as other men have. So I mean, it has been particularly very difficult for rag pickers to sell their waste to kabaddi dealers and the big businessmen sitting in Narela Bhavana, because the rates of waste have plastic waste specifically have gone considerably down right now. So being a woman, and she being specifically being a single woman, has been reduced to a wasted life. So as much as I would want to, even avoid using the term, I could see the fact that someone who was earning for herself now has to go out on streets and beg. She now comes to my colony frequently and she begs on daily basis. So I think in that sense, obviously the vulnerability of a woman increases much more, and they are reduced to their lives.
Yeah. So we have received a question in the chat box that somebody, I just forgot his name. Somebody has asked that, can you please elaborate the Bauman's analytical category of waste?
Yeah, so Bauman, like he does not look at just he does not look at waste as an analytical category. Bauman looks at wasted lives as analytical category. So when he is saying that though, and he is not just talking about waste, because that time he's also talking a lot in European context. So when he's talking in European context, he's also talking about the refugee and the migration crisis in European context. And he's trying to say that when these lives are bereft of any kind of rights, they become absolute wasted lives. It does not mean that their lives do not have any kind of meaning. It only means that they have they do not have any kind of access to this society in terms of making value for themselves in economic and social terms. And that is what he's trying to say, that they are wasted lives.
Okay. So anybody from the audience? So we will take two more questions, then we will wind up. Okay. If anybody has any question. Okay, so let me ask one question that I am curious about. That when you say that nowadays that the people are the governance are the government is informalizing or privatizing the whole chain of waste collection and recycling and all. So the employee who are employing, like you said about Ramkey, so the people they are employing, that also follow the same caste line or the caste question? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So basically, uh, as far as I have been in my research, so there are two sets of people in these private companies. One is the person who drives the van, and one is the helper who collects the waste. So primarily, I think I have talked around to 20 helpers and drivers. So drivers are mostly from other castes. They are not from Valmiki caste, and I have seen them. They are mostly Jats, but the helpers have been from Valmiki community. So, but this is not to say that there are people, there aren't people from other castes. There are there, but they are very marginal. In fact, even in government jobs, so I would say that nowadays 95% 95% it is Valmiki, but there are people, there are lots of Muslims nowadays also there, and there are people from OBC as well. I mean, some even told me that there are few Brahmins as well, but they are very very little in number.
Okay, so have you followed or came across any advertisement for by this company? So are they issue hiring advertisement, then people apply, or they also collect the people from the informal networks that the city or the West Pickers does have?
I think I think that it's mostly through informal networks, but I think it's a good question to ponder upon, because I have not asked them whether they have come across this in advertisement, because mostly, most of the workers tell me that this person told me there is opening here, there is opening there, and join. But I think I would actually like to ask that question too.
So anybody have any other question? Please ask, or otherwise we should call it a day. Anybody from the audience? Yeah, I don't think anybody is going to.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot for this talk, and we are really delighted to have you on board. I hope. Actually, I'm really sorry for also for this delay and technical glitches that
No,
happened initially.
absolutely fine, not a problem. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Okay. Thank you so much. We have our next segment on 15th, so I think the people will join, and we will inform them by our registration form and all. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.